The New York Jets are now on the board.
The New York Jets select Darrelle Revis.
Being in New York has been one of the greatest blessings.
Mekhi Becton.
Let's go, I'm ready. Go, let's go.
The New York Jets select.
As we said when the season ended, we were going to be in evaluation mode. Based on those evaluations, we're comfortable with the direction we're going. Having the number 2 pick in the draft, I think it's safe to say that, you know, if our pick was a little later, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. We'd fully be comfortable moving forward with Sam. I think there are a lot of discussions that led to this decision. And ultimately, we felt like this was a decision that was best for all parties.
Welcome to our Jets Draft Countdown series presented by Dunkin'. I'm Eric Allen inside the BetMGM studio. In just 3 weeks, the 2021 NFL Draft will commence. And with it comes a unique opportunity. The Jets own the number 2 and number 23 overall selections in round 1. 5 picks in the first 3 rounds and 10 overall. In March, Jets GM Joe Douglas said, ultimately for us to get to where the great teams are, the most consistent teams are, you do that through the draft. It's the most team-friendly market in sports. For us to really be the team that's consistently competing for Super Bowls, we have to hit on our draft picks. Late Monday afternoon, Douglas gained more assets and made the Jets' landscape clearer in the process, obtaining 3 picks from the Carolina Panthers in exchange for Sam Darnold. The Jets will have a new starting quarterback in 2021. Douglas's first draft as GM of the Jets last spring resulted in the picks of 9 players and was headlined by Louisville tackle Mekhi Becton. One of the NFL's most impressive rookies last season, Becton is a foundational piece for a team that wants to win in the trenches. Working alongside new head coach Robert Saleh, Douglas has had a non-stop offseason. After addressing pressing needs of free agency, he now turns his full attention to the draft. With a near certainty that Jacksonville will take Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence with the number 1 overall selection, many in the football world have already shifted their eyes to the Jets. The NFL draft is on the horizon. Have the Jets zeroed in on a quarterback to take with that number 2 overall selection? In addition to Lawrence, many pundits believe Zach Wilson from BYU, Justin Fields from Ohio State, Trey Lance from North Dakota State, and Alabama's Mac Jones will all hear their names called in round 1. During our Draft Countdown series presented by Dunkin', I'll be joined by Jets reporters Ethan Greenberg and Olivia Landis. And we'll get analysis from Jets legends Anthony Becht and Eric Coleman. The Athletic's NFL draft analyst Dane Brugler will break down the prospects, and NFL Network's Brian Baldinger will continue to provide his breakdowns like nobody else. After the Darnold trade, Douglas has draft capital to do a lot of damage this spring and next, with 10 and 11 picks respectively in the 2021 and 2022 drafts. Let's get started with a reunion of sorts as we're now joined by Anthony Becht and Eric Coleman. Welcome, fellas. So great to see you. Anthony, when you heard of the Jets-Panthers swap Monday afternoon, what were your initial thoughts?
Well, I think it answered a lot of questions as far as where the Jets lie and where they're going to be in this draft. I think that's going to be the biggest concern for everyone is where are the Jets organization, Joe Douglas, and the scouting department, and where do they sit as far as where they want to move this team? And it was clear with the movement of Sam Darnold that they want to get something fresh, a new start. Similarly to what this offense is going to be. Remember now, this offense is new to everybody. You know, if Sam were still the quarterback, he'd be learning from day one, just like everyone else or any other quarterback that would be involved in it. So, you know, whether you agree with it or not, I think for me, it sits well either way. If Sam was, you know, a guy that they protected and they wanted to continue to build around him, there would have been still some question marks as far as what that would bring as far as Sam's career moving forward. I think it's incomplete when you're talking about evaluating a guy that's been up and down, whether it's injuries, the weapons around him, the lack of support the previous regime put around him, and then, of course, moving forward in a new system, you just don't know. So I think in the Jets' eyes and Joe Douglas, how they feel is this, look, if we're going to start fresh, we have some quarterbacks that they see or they've probably already know that who they feel like is the guy that can fit the system moving forward. And everybody's kind of on a fresh start moving with that. So, do I like the trade? I think either way I sit good with it. So again, the only way to make it worth it is build around the guy that's next. And that's going to be key for Joe Douglas and his staff.
Did you think this move was inevitable? And also, what did you think about the compensation the Jets got back, a 6th-round pick this spring? But I really look forward to 2022 because you pick up the 2nd-round pick and a 4th. So you have not only 2 first-round picks this year, you still have the 2 first-round picks in 2022, but you have 2 second-round picks in 2022 as well.
Well, to answer the first part of your question, I didn't think this was inevitable. I think that Sam Darnold is a quarterback that, a lot of Jet fans believe in, that if you put the weapons around him, put the offensive line in front of him, give him the tools, that he can thrive as a quarterback. But at the same time, you can't blame the Jets for wanting to move forward. And it's exciting, to know that a new quarterback is going to come to town, with the new regime, a lot of weapons around him. I think that any quarterback that comes here is going to be set up for success. When you look at the compensation, yes, I think that it was a great package for both teams. You look at the Carolina Panthers, they get a very young quarterback, a guy who wants to win, very athletic, has a huge upside. But when you look at the Jets, a 6th-round pick this year, a 2nd and a 4th next year, I think that's a great situation for them. You continue to build upon that. That's the way that you build a team, is on draft picks. You supplement that with free agents, you add in some players here and there, but you build the foundation of your team through the draft. And I think the Jets have done a great job of preparing that, accumulating draft picks, and I'm excited for what's going to happen later on this month.
AB, the Jets have just 2 quarterbacks on their roster as we sit here today, in James Morgan, a Douglas draft pick from a year ago, and Mike White, 0 combined NFL starts. So if this team indeed takes a quarterback at 2, do you think they already have their guy right now?
Well, from James Morgan's standpoint, he is down here in Tampa. I actually saw him train this weekend, so I know he's working his butt off. At least whatever scenario he's in, he'll be prepared. But there's no doubt. I think, and even if they're not exactly sure, they got it narrowed down to 2 players at least. I think there's still time to evaluate guys, to get the answers, to check the boxes. They don't have to be 100% sure that if they like 2 guys, they love them, then what's the big difference between each one? What are the skill sets that are important to them that they feel like that quarterback can strive forward and have early success? Because clearly this is, again, when you talk about drafting a quarterback, a la several years ago with Sam Darnold, it's about rebuilding and getting that process spinning. The rebuild word is not really a good word anymore. It's all about how quickly can you get the pieces around that quarterback, and then that quarterback's able to thrive without maybe going through so many bumps and ups and downs and bruises throughout the early part of his career, which he will do. It's not a shoo-in for Zach Wilson, but you do like upside. And really, when we talk about the draft, whether you're the first pick or the 200th pick, it's built on potential. Everything's potential. Nothing has really been accomplished yet till you get out there. So finding the guy that fits the pieces and scheme of your offense, number one. Does Zach Wilson present those things that you want in a quarterback, or is it another guy? And when he does get there, how quickly can you build around him? Because ultimately that will dictate the success of any quarterback you take early on in the draft.
All right, Eric, you're going to have the last question here in the opening segment. Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones. Again, we're going to cover all these guys coming up. Not only just hearing from you fellows, but Dane Brugler, Brian Baldinger as well. Judy Batista is going to be on the show here in a little bit. What about any of those 3 guys? Any of those names pop for you?
Well, the one guy that you kind of get excited about that, I know I personally haven't got to see too much of is Trey Lance. A guy that, he scorched the college football field, out in North Dakota, did a great job as a quarterback, was dynamic as a player, very efficient, doesn't turn the football over. And, you only got to see 1 game last year. You only got to see 1 showcase. So, all these guys, Mac Jones is another player, comes from a great program. He had a bevy of weapons and really took advantage of them down in Alabama. So all these guys can throw the ball well. They're all tremendous leaders. And, it's going to be exciting to see their growth. No matter what team they go on, I would love for the Jets to make the right pick. But as Anthony said, it's all about potential right now. Who fits your scheme, who do you see growing the most within this organization. So it's going to be exciting to see who they pick.
It certainly will. Thanks, fellas. We're going to see you both shortly. The Athletics NFL draft analyst Dane Brugler just updated his 10 top prospects in the 2021 class. And he has Trevor Lawrence #1 overall and Zach Wilson #3 and the aforementioned Trey Lance at #7. Now for more from Brugler, let's go across the way to Ethan Greenberg.
Thanks, EA. Let's bring in Dane. Dane, we just took a look at your top 10 prospects from your new top 100 list. What are some of the biggest changes in the updated list compared to the first one you put out?
Plenty of changes when you factor in the Senior Bowl, the workouts that we've had. We finally have some exact measurements on these guys. Not that that mattered all that much, but I think maybe the most surprising thing about this top 100 were some of the positions. You look at wide receiver, 15 wide receivers in my top 100, and I tell you what, I was kicking myself for not including about 5 more guys in there, because you could make a case it could have easily been 20. You look at offensive tackle. 12 offensive tackles in this top 100, and that does not include guys like Alex Leatherwood from Alabama, Elijah Vera Tucker from USC, Jalen Mayfield from Michigan, all possible tackles, but I graded them at guard. So we're talking a lot of really quality offensive linemen in the top 100 this year. And then even, you look at pass rusher as well, corner, I think I had 12 or 13 corners in my top 100. And of those 13 corners, 11 of them were in the top 62. So 11 corners possibly in the first 2 rounds, certainly notable. So this is a top 100 that I'm sure might see a few tweaks between now and when the draft officially starts here in 1 month. But I think this is I think we have a good idea of where a lot of these players are sitting at right now.
Dane, knowing what the Jets have done in free agency, how do you think this draft class's strengths and weaknesses now mirror up with Jets' perceived needs after Joe Douglas has already filled some holes?
And obviously the Jets were active in free agency and addressing some of their key needs. But at the same time, I would argue that I don't know that there was anything that the Jets did in free agency that's going to ultimately stop them from addressing that position through the draft. Carl Lawson was a great ad. That was probably my favorite move that the Jets made over the last month. But I still think if the right pass rusher is there at 23, they could go that direction. Wide receiver with Corey Davis added in the mix. Maybe, this is a deep wide receiver group. Instead of having to go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, they could maybe wait 3rd, 4th, 5th round and still get a quality player. So you look at cornerback. Cornerback, arguably one of the top needs on this roster going into the draft, and that matches up well. Like I mentioned, 11 corners in the top 2 rounds in my rankings. So there almost assuredly will be a quality cornerback prospect available for them with one of their first 3 or 4 picks.
If you want to see Dane's full top 100, be sure to check it out on The Athletic. Dane, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Ethan.
All options are on the table for the Jets.
First of all, Steve mentioned, oh my goodness, that is a silly play.
They have a very valuable commodity. They have the 2nd pick in a draft where there are a bunch of quarterbacks that people want.
This dude needs to be off the board when the Jets are picking at the number 2 position.
Quarterback Mac Jones on full display, climbing up in those draft boards, throwing in front of GMs and coaches.
Yeah, I'll tell you, what he showed me first and foremost is that he has got an absolute gun on him for an arm. I mean, that ball jumps off of his hand and it is cutting through the air, and he can make all the throws that you need him to make at the next level. He knows when to take some velocity off. He knows when to put velocity on.
Best quarterback workout he had seen in a long time.
We're talking about a 4.4 40 from the quarterback position in the modern football era, where we're asking the quarterback to be able to move and get outside the pocket.
This is a kid who stuffed the stat sheet, no question, right? 33 touchdowns this year, added another 10 rushing touchdowns. But I mentioned it, you need an extra category here. And it's the wow throw category. He might lead the nation in throws of that type. That's the throw of the pro day season right now.
I mean, look, there's no way the Jets can't sit here and not like him.
I don't care what Shefty says. I don't care what the experts say. I want to hear what you would do if you were the Jets with the 2nd pick. What would you do?
Outstanding footage from the recent pro days out there. It's hype season. The draft is 3 weeks away, and you are watching the Jets Draft Countdown series presented by Duncan. Eric Allen inside the BetMGM studio. Speaking of quarterbacks, the Jets made a major swap this week, dealing Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers. For more on that, let's go across the way to Olivia Landis.
Thanks, EA. Judy, welcome in on the show. As we all know, big news broke around the league when Jets GM Joe Douglas traded quarterback Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers earlier this week in exchange for a 2021 sixth-round pick and a 2022 second and fourth-round pick pending a physical. Now, you took to Twitter, and your initial reaction was, wow, in all caps. But what are your initial thoughts on this trade of quarterback Sam Darnold?
Honestly, the wow was more a reference to the timing. I think we all sort of thought the trade was coming. The Jets had been non-committal about Darnold this offseason, saying they wanted to get a look at the guys who were coming out of school. And, certainly it seemed as the days went on that a trade was likely. I think it's good. Look, I think it's good for Darnold. I think it's good for the Jets. I think it's, I feel like Sam probably could use a fresh start and will probably benefit from restarting his career. He's still very young, not even 24. So he's got plenty of time ahead of him for a career. And look, while giving up on a guy who's still only 23 and was your third overall pick just 3 years ago is tough. I understand the desire to want to start with a clean slate. You've got a brand new coach, you were starting over with a new offense anyway. And I understand the desire of the organization to just turn the page and start fresh. You've got a lot of draft capital to use coming up in the next year or two, actually. And so I think this ultimately is probably the right move. There's, nothing is guaranteed. That's for sure. Nothing is guaranteed about any draft pick. But I think organizationally, this is probably the right move to start fresh, start over, and go forward from here.
A little earlier, you mentioned a brand new head coach in Robert Saleh. How can Robert Saleh and GM Joe Douglas now take advantage of this opportunity and work together to build this team from the ground up?
Well, yeah, that's why I think really the trade was ultimately the right move. As much as you're giving up on a guy who you drafted so high only 3 years ago, this gives everybody a chance to turn the page. And I think that's really important when you're starting with a new head coach and a first-time head coach, right? He wants to set the tone. You want him to be able to bring his culture in, have his coaching staff run the offense the way they want to run it, have them get the quarterback they want to run that offense. The offense was changing anyway. So do you just go forward all at once? Everybody's starting over. I think that's really important. I think, look, Robert Saleh, in the limited interactions we've been able to have, Zoom interactions that he's had with reporters in this offseason, he's a really impressive guy, and you can certainly see how he will be able to galvanize the locker room, and he's the kind of person people will want to follow. He's that kind of figure, got that kind of personality. So I don't think he'll have any trouble setting a culture and setting a leadership tone. And you just want him and the organization to have the players that they want to go forward. This draft, every draft is really important. This draft is really important. Let's be honest. This is probably the decision about quarterback is probably going to be the defining decision of Joe Douglas as a GM for the New York Jets. It's huge. He has to get it right. We say that about every quarterback decision, but I mean, this is a pretty big one when you trade away your former first round draft pick and you're about to pick number 2 in the draft. This is a pretty big one. And again, give them as many pieces as they can to go forward and go forward quickly with some success.
Judy, as always, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. EA, back to you.
Thanks, Liv. Tremendous insight, as always, from Judy Battista, former Jets beat writer. In the 2017 NFL Draft, new Jets edge rusher Carl Lawson was taken in the 4th round by the Cincinnati Bengals. At Auburn, Lawson had 24 tackles for loss and 14 sacks. Lawson, who had 20 sacks with the Bengals and led all NFL defensive linemen with 32 quarterback hits last season, is going to be counted on big time in the Jets' 4-3 defense. But there are a lot of edge rushers coming out. And for more on the 2021 class, here is Brian Baldwin.
My number one defensive end prospect in this draft is Greg Rousseau from the University of Miami. After opting out this year, go back to 2019, you look at his size, 6'5", 260 pounds, real good speed, long arms, knows how to use them to disengage, get off the blocks and get after the quarterback. I mean, he's a top 10 prospect in this draft right now. I've seen him line up over the center, over the guard. Here he is on the outside edge of the tackle. Be able to separate, disengage, makes a lot of plays on the edge. Top 10 prospect, best football in front of him. Now, my second best prospect is Kwity Paye from Michigan. Played 38 games for the Wolverines. Really rocked up, almost 6'4", 270 pounds, tested very well. Ran a 4.5 40 at his pro day, and he's got power, compact power. Short, choppy steps, backs up offensive tackles, and then takes the ball carrier down. And off the edge, he has a little bit of a plan, all right? Now, I think when you watch him work, you watch his hands, he's thinking about it. He's been coached. And so when he comes off right here, you watch it right here. See? That chop, chop. Now rip. Now turn the hips and close. Take the quarterback down. And finally, my third best prospect in this draft, also from the University of Miami, is Jalen Phillips. After transferring from UCLA, sitting out a year and having injuries, he's got good length, athletic body, bendy, can change directions, and really run. You know, runs under a 4.6 40 at 266 pounds. And I think, you know, only 1 year of production, he's got a chance. See this movement right here, the hips, to swim, to be able to get inside that tackle right there and get after the quarterback. I think he's going to be a natural edge rusher. Jalen Phillips is my third best defensive end prospect in this draft. Not a great group, but I think they all have an opportunity to really play their best football at the NFL level.
Now you can get 2 medium iced coffees for $5 at Dunkin'. Exclusions apply. Participation may vary. There might be nothing more addictive this time of year than the Sun and NFL mock drafts. Olivia, the sun's out. Now what's happening on the mock draft front?
Each week we're going to be breaking down some of the league's top mock drafts and what exactly those picks will mean for the New York Jets. However, before we get started, let's bring back in Anthony Becht and Eric Coleman so they can provide us some insight on some of these picks as well. Fellas, welcome on back. Let's dive first into ESPN's Todd McShay's 2-round mock draft. Now, Ethan, for ESPN's Todd McShay's 2-round mock draft, he has Zach Wilson, the quarterback from BYU, coming in at number 2 for the New York Jets. This seems to be a common theme around the league. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, this is the most popular pick even before Sam Darnold was traded to the Carolina Panthers. So in terms of this mock draft, not only does Zach Wilson now fill a need, but a lot of draft analysts think that Zach Wilson will fit what the Jets want to run here with Mike LaFleur better than any other quarterback who would be available at this point in time, meaning not named Trevor Lawrence. So all the guys that were discussed earlier, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, available. Todd McShay goes to Zach Wilson. Anthony said it earlier, a monster 2020 season, 33 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And I'm actually curious, Anthony, about what you think of Zach Wilson and the popularity of this pick at number 2, given the other quarterbacks on the board.
Well, you know, for Zach Wilson, it's really easy to fall in love with this kid. You know, you really like what we mentioned earlier about his ability to just extend plays and really to an ultimate level. I mean, he's got a unique gift to, when things break down, to not only extend and get away from those pressures or those tragedies that may happen, but to also complete balls, make plays down the field, or if he has to, make some plays with his legs. You know, BYU's system was very spread out, a lot of trips formation, 3-by-1, where they had ability to look at different receivers. He spread the ball around quite a bit and was able to really see the field very well as a college player. He did have a huge jump from his first 2 seasons playing at BYU, but boy, were those jumps huge. And I think when you watch him, he shows a great poise, great leadership. His players rallied around him the entire season. And, he came up big for the year, and it's helped him extremely well and put him into the conversation as why people think he may be the second best quarterback coming out of this draft. So, of course, all these quarterbacks have something to work on. They have something they'll have to improve and get better on. But, again, we can pick apart everybody, even the great Trevor Lawrence in that department. It really comes down to what the fit is, how he fits into that scheme. And if he's your guy, you got to go all in on him.
And coming in at number 23 overall, Todd McShay has running back Travis Etienne for the New York Jets. EA, what are some of your initial thoughts on Etienne?
Don't go to the concession stands when he is lining up on the offensive side of the ball, because this guy, he just lights it up like the 4th of July. Let me give you some numbers here. Not only did he run 4.41, 4.43 at his pro day, Etienne averaged 7.22 yards per carry. Okay, that's pretty good. He also recorded 6,894 all-purpose yards, second most in ACC history. But let's go back to the scoreboard. Total touchdowns, 78. Rushing touchdowns, 70. Points, 468. Touchdowns in 46 of his 55 career games. It's going to be fascinating to see if he's still on the board, because I think he'd be a perfect fit in this Mike LaFleur offense, because it's one cut, downhill, and watch out goalposts, because he's going to find them.
Now, Ethan, when we look again at this mock draft, in the second round of this mock draft, McShay has the Jets taking an offensive tackle, Liam Eichenberg, out of Notre Dame. Why is that important for the Jets to possibly add to that offensive line?
Well, we know that Joe Douglas loves his offensive linemen. So is this pick surprising in terms of position? Not at all. Now, if you were to ask me, was I a little surprised that it was Eichenberg? Hear me out here. I'm going to say yes, because when you look at the history of the types of offensive linemen Joe Douglas has either signed or drafted, they all have some form of position versatility that they've shown in the past. Liam Eichenberg only played left tackle for Notre Dame from 2018 to 2020. He was a very good one. He was a consensus All-American this past season. So do I think Eichenberg can do it? Absolutely. I think he can play a different position. And if he were drafted here like McShay has, he'd have to play a different position, because we know Mekhi Becton's on the left side. But this is what the pre-draft process is for, to figure out if he can do it and where he's been training in the pre-draft process. So am I surprised? Not at all. And in McShay's mock draft, he has the quarterback, he adds the playmaker in Travis Etienne, and then he adds the protection up front in Liam Eichenberg. So I'm not surprised by the position pick at all.
So it sounds like he's trying to get a very well-rounded picks over there for the New York Jets. Let's take a look at our second mock draft. This one comes from NFL.com's Lance Zierlein. And let's loop in Eric Coleman here on this one. As we can all see, pick number 2, it is similar as Todd McShay's. They got quarterback Zach Wilson. But the interesting one here, EC, coming in at pick number 23, he has linebacker Azeez Ojulari. What are some of your thoughts on Azeez Ojulari?
Well, when you look at Ojulari, I mean, he's a Greek god. He has long arms, he's big, he's strong, he has an amazing first step. He does a good job of accelerating once he gets past that tackle to attack the quarterbacks. But he also does a great job against the run. He's 6'3", 240 pounds. So he's not the biggest defensive end or outside linebacker, but he does a great job of coming in and filling. He does a great job in coverage. You can cover running back, you can cover tight ends. So what you get with him is a very versatile player. He's a great teammate. You hear nothing but great things from his teammates and coaches about his leadership. So I think he's the kind of player, that hard worker, that character guy that can come in and make a big difference for the Jets defense.
Each week, we will be taking a look and taking a deeper dive into some of these mock drafts that we will be seeing around the league and breaking down what these picks mean for the New York Jets. But that's all we have on this week's mock draft breakdown. EA, back to you.
Thanks, Liv. Unfortunately, we are all on the clock, and time is running short here inside the BetMGM studio. But the great thing about the Jets Draft Countdown Series presented by Dunkin', we're going to be here each Wednesday up until the draft. So we have 4 episodes in all, and what a crew of characters we do have. You just heard from Olivia Landis and Ethan Greenberg, Eric Coleman, Anthony Becht, Dane Brugler, Brian Baldinger, Judy Batista was on the show today, former Jets beat writer, great NFL.com columnist. So check us out on all the Jets digital platforms. Next week, deeper dive, even more of a deeper dive on the quarterbacks. We'll also review how Jets free agency might impact their draft approach. Until next time, everyone, so long.